You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. The family lawyer has said that the man who was kicked in the head and stamped on by a police officer has a cyst on his brain. The former Strictly Come Dancing professional, Katya Vashilas, has told Sky News she was treated badly by one of the other dancers and says the BBC producer knew about what was going on. In the last few moments, Kamala Harris has met Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's have a look at some of those front pages for you now. Well, the front of The Guardian, Rachel Reeves' upcoming Treasury audit, reporting that she will reveal a £20 billion hole in government spending. The Telegraph also focuses on the Chancellor of the Exchequer's upcoming revelation on public finances. The Eye leads on how Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are being urged to protect tax relief for millions. While the front of the Mail reports on Labour's green energy bill being branded a lie by the Conservatives. The Mirror hails wife of stabbing victim Mark Teaton a hero after she reportedly intervened in the attack. Looking ahead to the start of the Olympics in Paris tomorrow, the Metro proclaims, "On your marks, get set, gold." The FT reports that the financial technology company Revolut has been granted a UK banking licence. And the Daily Star leads on Jennifer Aniston's defence of cat ladies in light of comments made by Trump's running mate, JD Vance. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Steve Richards and Salma Shah. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with The Guardian front page and the economy. Chancellor to reveal £20 billion shortfall in public finances. This is a speech that she's going to be given on... I think tomorrow, is it? Yes, on Monday.
On Monday, yes. So this is very interesting because, as Steve and I were discussing, this is really about the setup of the politics of what is to come. Everybody knows, even during the election campaign, there were going to be some tough choices. That was why there wasn't anything really revealed on perhaps what Rachel Reeves was going to do when she got into the Treasury. And now we're really getting into the detail and some of the substance of this. So you've got £20 billion shortfall, very specific number, possibly even been put out by the Treasury as this kind of precursor to some of the harder choices that she may need to make in autumn. And interestingly, it's described as an audit, which is not a proper fiscal event. It's nothing I've ever heard of before. Steve, you might correct me on this, but I've never heard of a Treasury audit before.
Well, it's, to be honest, politically a really impressive Treasury operation, because up until the election we heard Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer say, well, look, there's no need for these tax rises for our early steps in government, our proposals in the manifesto. But they knew there were immediate crises coming to hit them. But they couldn't really talk about that in the election because that would have implied tax rises, and Labour always slaughtered when they do that. But the moment they're now in, Rachel Reeves has cleverly conducted, as Salma says, an audit, which enables her to say, look, there is this shortfall, £20 billion. She's making the statement in the Commons on Monday. It will be a big moment in the sense that it's the build-up to the budget, where you're trying to frame an argument about an immediate set of emergencies that have to be paid for, this £20 billion shortfall. And it reminds me so much of Gordon Brown after the 97 election when he was Chancellor. There were very clever media briefings in the build-up to his first budget. Context was different, the economy was growing, there was quite a lot of money around. But that's what's happening, a framing of an argument, blaming the last government to get ready for some tough, what they call fiscal decisions in the autumn. Yeah,
all the experts are saying that she will be forced to announce tax cuts. I mean, there's no uncertainty about that.
No, and I think there's a really interesting phrase here in the bottom of the Guardian piece that says, economists have predicted Reeves will kitchen sink the bad news about the economy. So there'll be no holes barred. I mean, of course, there'll all be terrible Tory problems that she will be encountering to give herself that smooth path. But let's not be in any doubt, there are going to be tax rises. And then the rest of the papers, as we'll see, will be talking about what those tax rises look like.
I mean, she has previously ruled out changes to income tax, VAT, national insurance and corporation tax, and those are the biggest
big four
revenue raisers. So definitely not going to touch those.
She emphatically won't touch them. When you rule them out, you can't then, within months, put them up. I don't think they should have unequivocally ruled out national insurance. I don't think they needed to, but they did. So it won't be them, but that means there will be speculation about what is available to put up.
And the Telegraph looking ahead and speculating about what those tax rises might be. What will they result in for you and I?
Well, what we found really interesting about the Telegraph is that you have The Guardian, which is a left-wing Labourish supporting newspaper. It talks about 20 billion hole for public finances. And then you have the Telegraph that talks about the same number, essentially, £19 billion hole in finances, and has its secondary headline as ground for autumn tax raid. So you can clearly see, this is a much more right-wing paper, you can see where that divide is now going to come in. But I think that this is the kind of nervousness that's going to come from all the Tory-supporting right-wing media about, given that you've ruled out those 4 tax cuts, where else can you go? And the speculation is going to be around things like capital gains.
She won't announce that on Monday, but she's just going to set the scene about the scale of the challenges in terms of spending. But I know that she's also told departments to look for savings to pay for some of the emergency spending. I think she will accept the independent pay review body, which is recommending above inflation pay settlements. But equally, I think she is, as well as clearing the ground for tax rises, is being quite tough with ministers about finding savings. So there's a huge amount of activity going on in this area that will largely define the government for quite some time to come. It's a big period for Rachel Reeves, this.
Yeah, and you've also got in this piece as well, Jonathan Reynolds talking about how actually some of the pledges that we made during the election, they're just not possible because now we've seen the state of the public finances. So we're going to see a lot of this sort of reneging on the manifesto because, we've now come in and seen the books, which was, in fairness, something that they said throughout the election campaign. We need to get in and see what it looks like. But you are going to see a lot of this language. But as Steve said, this is an incredibly well-managed Treasury briefing. We are looking at Friday's papers. This is a Monday announcement. This is not even a fiscal event. This puts me in mind of the good old days when I used to be in government, back in 2014, when things ran smoothly and there was discipline. So just for that, this is quite a surprising operation.
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised by that Johnny Reynolds thing because a lot of the manifesto is relatively incremental and they are moving fast, implementing a lot of it, but quite a lot of it doesn't cost very much. These things that Rachel Reeves, is tackling are expensive in that they are immediate demands, which in many cases have to be met. And I think she will give examples from this so-called audit.
I suppose you grab
over the weekend's papers as well.
I suppose you do grab the bull by the horns very quickly and very early on. It's better to hit hard with those things that might be unpopular soon into your administration.
To kitchen sink it, one might say, as the economist.
I've never heard this. She's going to kitchen sink it, and it's the post-election budget.
I don't think it's a positive, Steve.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right, vote for us. We're kitchen sinking. But the post-election budget, you think George Osborne, real-term spending cuts announced after the 2010 election, although quite a lot of them he said he would do, and etc. You often take tough decisions early on. The Tories will be looking inward with their leadership contest. If not now, when? This is the time to do it.
The Eye warning that Sir Keir Starmer shouldn't hit pensioners, essentially, being warned against pension tax hit for 7 million savers.
Yeah, so this is, again, we're going into now the territory of, if not the big 4 revenue raisers of tax, what could the Chancellor potentially look at? And there's always been, this argument around capital gains, anything that pensioners are saving, at the moment could be in scope. Now, there's obviously that political question here, which is it was always assumed that Conservatives would never touch this type of tax because their core vote is possibly more in this area than Labour's. I think this is an interesting question, not just politically in terms of the demographic and the voter type, but also, for me, the concern that for a lot of pensioners, you know, there is some wealth occupied with housing for some pensioners, but a lot of pensioners who still are on quite low incomes and quite low pensions. So if you do start taxing this, what kind of position do you leave those people in who don't have recourse to work in the same way as the rest of the labour market? So I think there's an interesting ethical question here as well as just a political one.
You see, here is the problem with tax rises. You can always find arguments against them in a vacuum. But there's the other side of the ledger, which is, so what are you going to do with the independent pay review body? Say no and then trigger more strikes and recruitment crises? No, you're going to pay it and hope that addresses a recruitment crisis in many public services. Are you going to not deal with that blood compensation package, which both parties agreed to pay up for, but haven't said how it will be paid for? Universities are going bust and so on. So in the end, although you can focus on other things like reform, a ubiquitous but imprecise word, you have to sometimes find resources. And therefore, taxes, however problematic, are going to have to go up. And there will be arguments against all the ones she raises, but there will be very strong arguments for doing it.
But I was just going to say, then don't rule out all the four that you could potentially raise. I mean, you're right, it's a question of choices.
What are the big four that they've said they're not going to touch?
Of how it's more evenly spread and who picks that up is the issue.
Completely. And you know, to rule out, in fact they've ruled out corporation tax as well, so there are limited areas to go at, and they're all problematic, but not doing it is even more problematic.
Let's go to the Mail. They're asking, will the green energy plan work? This is Labour's plan, £300 green energy bill saving that was promised, I believe, by Ed Miliband. The Conservatives are saying that it's a lie. It's all been untrue and there's no way that they can meet that promise.
Well, I'm going to let Steve start with this one because he was quite excited about the fact that the Mail had covered this. We thought that this might have been a Treasury-related story.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't know. They're leaping several hurdles here to call it a lie because they've only announced the publicly owned energy company today. And I watched Keir Starmer's speech where it was launched, and he did a Q&A with journalists afterwards, and I heard him repeat the idea that this would lead to a reduction in bills. So,
but the Mail is saying that Downing Street refused to repeat the pledge yesterday. So at that briefing, they're saying that they refused to repeat it.
They might not have done a briefing, but I heard Keir Starmer repeat it in public when this thing was launched this morning. So. I mean, the Mail's going to go for this, they're going to go for Ed Miliband, they're going to go for Angela Rayner, figures of the left in the cabinet. But they've only announced the publicly owned body today. You know, the onslaught begins against it. But I dare to be optimistic that breaking the taboo that privatisation has, especially of monopolies, have been this great triumph for the energy market is working brilliantly. This challenges that, and I think that I really hope it works because we need new models of delivery. These markets are failing badly, water, energy, etc.
So, from my perspective, one might argue that the reason these markets are failing badly is because they have government intervention. And one of the issues that we have here is that, on one hand, Ed Miliband is saying that we're going to have this essentially private sort of type of business that goes in and tries to greenify our electricity, and that's going to bring down prices.
Yeah.
But the fight is always about that consumer price and the artificial suppression in all utilities and anything that we are using. But if you do that, what you are tampering with is the market. Or do we have to accept that actually prices need to be higher? But perhaps politicians don't want voters to think that.
But when private companies fail, say in the energy market, they don't say, oh, there's too much government interference here. They turn to the government to help bail them out. And so, you know, quite often you get private companies in these failing markets pleading for the government to intervene.
Well, we used to be able to do that, and now we had Brexit, so now we can do it. The European Union used to protect us from governments being bailed out, from companies being bailed out by governments, sadly.
Right, well, have we got time to debate Brexit?
No, I'm going to stop you right there. Salma and Steve, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, as Benjamin Netanyahu meets Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, is a deal between Israel and Hamas close? We'll discuss that next. Do stay with us.
Definitely not playing outside as much as they used to. So there's a report out today, the Red Row Community Play Report, where we've asked 2,000 parents and grandparents about their children's play. And what clearly comes out from that is that over 2/3 of parents and grandparents say their children are not playing out as much as they did when they were children. The number one reason seems to be about safety, particularly road safety, so the ability to get to a space to play. So 1/3 of families say that they don't have a place that they can walk to where their children can play, so a green space or a playground. They don't have somewhere they can walk to easily get to. Some children are walking to school, but way fewer children walk to school than used to.
Is that right?
Yeah, the numbers of children walking to school have declined hugely over the last generation or two. And then at school, there are opportunities for play, but again, we've seen the amount of time that's given to play within schools declining over time as well. You know, things have changed, haven't they, since we were children, and screens and devices now are prolific and lots of children have access to them. But actually, if you ask children, what would you rather be doing? Do you want to see your friends in real life? Do you want to go play with them? Or do you want to stay home and play on your screen? Most children will choose being with other children. But if we don't make outside play opportunities accessible to children so that they can easily get there, so that they're interesting and enjoyable places to play, then of course they're going to choose the device. So I think we need to be really careful about kind of blaming children for spending too much time on devices if we're not creating environments where children can access exciting, interesting play opportunities with other children outside.
So what's your advice to parents and grandparents? What should they do to, what are fun things for kids to do outside?
Yeah, well, firstly, it is just acknowledging that it's hard, but I think it's about balancing that kind of time on screen and time outside. So you might give your child an ice cream over the summer holidays. You're not going to only feed them ice cream. Let them have some screen time, but also try and kind of get them outside. Have a look what's in your local area. Have a look at a map. Is there parks you haven't been to before? Are there places you want to explore? Plan together with your child. What are you excited about doing? How are we going to fit that in? And also, don't be scared to let them get a bit bored. Children are very creative and very resilient, and it's okay sometimes for them to be a bit bored.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our planet. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington, D.C.
British cuisine.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Steve Richards and Salma Shah. We're going to take a look at the Telegraph now, and this story about the Care Quality Commission. This is the body that inspects hospitals, care homes, etc. And apparently they are in total disarray. This is a finding from the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting.
Yeah, so Wes Streeting has said that it is not fit for purpose, which in political terms is quite a huge thing to say. He's said that he's been stunned by the extent of the failings of the institution that is supposed to identify and act on failings. And this is something that is obviously incredibly important. There's detail in this piece and on the front page of the Times about the types of failures that we're seeing, so people not properly trained to be able to carry out these inspections. For example, I'm actually incredibly pro the fact that the Health Secretary is saying this. I think it's important that we do have strength and trust and confidence in our institutions. And I'm really impressed that he's come out and said this so early, because I can't imagine there's lots of health professionals who will thank him for this. He's probably made himself a lot of enemies in this process, but I think he's probably done the right thing to shine a light on it.
Well, some of the detail, inspectors were found to be so inexperienced, some had never even been in a hospital before they inspected one.
Yeah, and then things go badly wrong, and normally it all happens retrospectively, and we wondered how it ever happened that we didn't know, etc. And so this is another very effective briefing operation, to be honest, this time from Wes Streeting. I mean, as Salma says, it splashes, it's on the front of the Times and the Telegraph. And it's again partly, as Rachel Reeves is doing, preparing for the scale of the challenge to repair the NHS with a very precise example. But irrespective of the strategic calculation, as Salma suggests, it reveals something deeply disturbing, that for 10 years, this very important means of scrutinising hospitals, care homes, etc., has been, if correct, dysfunctional. And so he's right to do it, and it's something that is relatively easy to put right, actually. It doesn't cost billions like some of the other challenges he's facing.
And just to say, the review was commissioned in the last months of the Conservative government, so he's picking up from a Conservative initiative there. Let's talk about the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. The US officials are saying that it's closer now than ever. Front page of The Guardian.
Well, they're saying that it's closer now than ever, but of course the dynamics in the US have changed so significantly, because we obviously now have the VP who's running to be on the ticket for president. I think the difficulty has always been that Joe Biden has privately expressed a lot of frustration with Netanyahu. Netanyahu's come over. He hasn't had the best of reception from Donald Trump either, as far as this has gone. But he's also now coming out and being more outwardly proactive about seeking that support for Israel, and particularly his actions, because let's not forget that he's also been quite divisive within Israel about the actions that he's taken. So there might be some movement. I think that there is definitely a very different dynamic there. He can't be dependent on Donald Trump in the way that he was before. And I think perhaps the VP running for president might also want to force this issue into a solution.
OK. Salma and Steve, we must leave it there. We have run out of time. See you in the coming up hour. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, a police officer is suspended over a video showing him kicking a suspect in the head during an arrest. We'll have the latest coming up.